So nobody else is going to offer you security to your insecurity if you're not accepting who you are and loving yourself for who you are.
This is the Sweno Creative Podcast. I'll be your host, professional photographer and video content creator, Brian Sweno. In this podcast, we will discuss all parts of business, marketing, mindset, creativity, and self-improvement. Sometimes with the help of a special guest to provide some incredible outside perspective. So TJ, tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for letting me share this time on this podcast with you. So I do a couple different things. I'm a healthcare leader as well as a podcast host. That's kind of what led us here. But I also do a lot of speaking all over the nation, and I'm an author. I've written a couple books as well.
Author. Is that exciting?
Yeah.
Or was that daunting?
Yeah, just me saying that is a step for me. Right. I used to be a guy that wrote a couple books, kind of like it just accidentally happened, but I had to learn to say that I'm actually an author of a couple books.
Right.
But yeah, so especially coming from a kid growing up who had trouble reading, comprehending. When I was 18 years old, I went to I don't even know if they exist anymore, but Sylvan Learning Center to learn how to read and actually comprehend, because my plan was always to go to medical school. Mm-hmm. I walked in, 18 years old, just graduated high school, getting ready to go to Indiana University, and I knew over the summer I needed to get better with that. And I sat down with a bunch of 6 and 7-year-olds, and they were reading their things, like where you should actually be learning how to read. Mm-hmm. But it was until I was 18 that I really kind of owned that I struggled with that. So to go from a kid who struggled reading, even when he was 18, to actually writing books and reading as much as I read now, it's pretty remarkable.
That's awesome. That kind of speaks to your whole journey, which we will get into here, about just constant improvement, essentially.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about your podcast. That's how we kind of met. He put out a Facebook post, actually. All you people out there that say Facebook doesn't help anything, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that. So put out a Facebook post asking if anyone knew some good videographers stuff, up the podcast a little bit. We'll get into this here in a little bit, but you did a whole bunch by yourself, which is super, super good. I'm proud of you for doing that.
Thank you.
Consistency is something that people lack. We've talked about that a little bit, and you did a ton. What gave you the idea to start a podcast in the first place? That's not the first thing people go to typically. So
yeah,
someone that inspired you, or...
Yeah, so honestly, no. When I started a podcast, this is full humility, I had never even listened to a podcast. I just knew what they were. And so once I committed to it, I listened to a couple podcasts just to kind of hear generally what it was. But I thought, okay, I know enough. It's just me talking about a topic for a certain amount of time. Let's just do it. Had no training on what to do, no headphones. I literally was just Googling best podcast best podcast microphones.
Yeah.
And just bought one. No editing software, no nothing, just kind of winging it. Again, the goal was to share a message. And so how my story really kind of started with some of that is I was sharing social media posts of positive quotes. They came into my life. There's one video in particular that had just a sequence of motivational quotes and different things, kind of speakers saying different things, and it just really resonated with me. So I shared that once. And then people in my life via social media said, thanks for sharing that. I needed that. So I thought, there's an opportunity here to make a difference in the world. So then I found another video after I watched that one, right? The beauty of YouTube is it is a rabbit hole, right? Sends you down a path.
Can be a good or a bad thing.
Correct. Yeah. So then the second video I shared, and then people were like, oh my gosh, I needed that. So I thought well, I know how they make me feel. So then I want to share a quote. So I shared a quote every single day for 8 years on social media. That led me to the books, that led me to the podcast. So really the goal was just try to reach more people in different ways, but I was also pretty responsive to what people were telling me. So there were people that saw that I was posting and they said, why don't you write a book? Or there were people that saw me posting and said, you should do a podcast. So I just did. It wasn't
how
even a plan.
How long into that process of, you said 8 years every day?
8 years every single day.
How long into that before you started the podcast, before you pulled the trigger on it?
9 years.
Really?
Yeah.
And then you've been doing it for a little over 2 years or so?
Yeah, a little over 2 years now.
We'll talk about that a little bit. The consistency. If there's one thing that I just always talk about with people, nothing can really get traction until you're consistent with it. Whether you're working out, whether you're running, whether you're trying to improve your mindset, trying to post online, grow a social following, nothing really gains traction without consistency. So let me just tell you this number real quick. TJ over here did 114 episodes weekly of his podcast by himself. No training, no expertise, just Googling some stuff, doing the best he could. That's nuts. Like that consistency is the thing that most people lack whenever they're trying to do this stuff. And whenever we had our first conversation, I looked back and I was like, dang, like your first episodes were audio only. And then you moved into doing some video stuff every single week, no matter what. 114. It's crazy. So I highly commend you on that. And then what we're doing, we're working together on his podcast now. We're just leveling up video production, audio quality, all the things. And we've seen some pretty good things happen from that in the past couple weeks. Still keeping it weekly, but we're just doing it at a higher level. What would you maybe say to someone who struggles with being consistent, whether it's working out or trying to start a podcast or basically any aspect of their life?
Yeah, well, I appreciate the kudos, first of all. It's something that was in the beginning just something whimsical and fun, but then I kind of recognized why, and that's really the main thing I would talk about with consistency is if you're going to do something like this, you have to be in it because you want to give something. If you're in it because you want to get something, you will not be consistent. I gave the posts, the books, the everything without any sort of money coming whatsoever. I don't get paid to do the podcast.
Yet.
Yes, optimism, right? But it was just this idea and this heart, this genuine passion for giving to people, sharing a message, giving back what I've been given, because I've been given so much in my life. And so it just became more purpose-driven. But it's also the steadfast belief that what I'm doing is going to make a difference. So if it's nutritionally, eating one salad once doesn't work. But making a healthier choice on a consistent basis works. Once you commit to that and not just doing it just to get to your end result, because there's a lot of people that talk about they have success, but then they fall back, right? This yo-yo stuff. And thinking about a lot of people have said, I've lost 20 pounds a bunch of times, right? So I've kind of started to use this phrase of instead of misplacing weight, lose it. But that starts with consistency and discipline and purpose, right? So why do you want to lose the weight? Fit into an outfit, sure. I have a wedding coming up. I have pictures coming up, whatever the thing is. But it's like we don't develop habits to help us maintain our consistency, and that's honestly been I'm going to develop this, this habit of recording, this habit of publishing, so on and so forth. But I had to start thinking about the people I was doing it for and less about myself. That's how I got to 114, kind of by myself. Yeah.
Plus, if you're losing the weight for the wedding or the photo shoot, what happens after that photo shoot?
Yeah.
You just put it back on.
Yeah.
And that's what happens over and over. You see with fad diets and stuff like that. People go keto for 2 months, Keto, in my opinion, is not sustainable whatsoever as a diet for 99% of people probably, especially in America. That's exactly what happens. They lose the water weight from keto and then they put it right back on as soon as they eat one little crumb of, something with carbs in it. So another aspect of all of this is your coaching and what you do as far as not only putting out these podcasts and putting out these motivational quotes and stuff on social media, but you personally get to meet with these people or via Zoom or online, I don't know if you do you do in-person coaching as well?
Yeah.
Give us kind of an overview of your coaching and what someone would expect if they were to get you as a coach.
Yeah. So coaching really for me is about empowering others and influencing others in a way that maybe believing in somebody for the first time is oftentimes the people that I interact with. But it's helping people see that there is a new way possible. My idea of coaching is a little different than some, right? So I'll do some individual in person. Sometimes I'll do weekly calls. So that's typically what I do. That's the majority of what I do is kind of do month to month with people. Having the same coach for the same year with unclear goals is not really effective. My goal is not to have people just be with me for a year. It's to really help them accomplish what they want to accomplish and help them sustain it. So it's weekly calls, but there's a ton of tools and resources that I've developed over the years that I share with all my clients so that they can understand that they're the reason why they're changing. It's not me. I'm the catalyst, right, to maybe introduction to some of these things, but they actually understand that when we stop working together, they're able to sustain the work we've been doing. So I've trained with the Neuro Leadership Institute out of New York City with David Rock and his team, and done a lot of brain-based coaching. I've gone through multiple kind of business coaching certifications as well to kind of meet people where they are, but to apply more science than just my experience. But I read and listen to coaches and things all the time just so that I can add more value and meet people where they are. But a lot of these coaching clients that I have, they have a goal that they've always wanted to accomplish, or maybe they just want to make a change in their life. And I kind of help them close the gap from where they are to where they want to be.
So give me like without giving too much away for free, obviously.
No, I'll give everything away.
Go check him out, his coaching and stuff. But if like maybe the most common thing that people come to you for, like across the board, normally there's like one thing that stands out. And what you would say to that person with that problem. Yeah.
So honestly, the idea of giving away something for free, I try to give everything I can because I always have more. And so I don't try to give with limitations. That was a lesson I had to learn early on, is I was afraid to give away my things because I was limited in the things I felt like I could offer. Yeah. I've busted through that thought now. So I'll give you everything I got no matter where we are. So so probably the most common thing that I see is kind of phrased differently. It's either I'm stressed and I don't feel like I have time for myself, or I've lost myself, or I'm stuck in a goal that I want to accomplish. So people run into a roadblock and then they fall back, like we've talked about. Most of it is stress, anxiety, worry, and kind of inability to commit to habits is typically the most common reasons why I work with people.
Do you find just by you being their coach and signing up for these weekly calls, putting almost a schedule in their life, that is something that, because I almost feel like, you hire a personal trainer at the gym. It's almost just keeping you consistent. Again, going back consistency, or someone holding you accountable. And, hey, did you actually finish that project that you wanted to do this week? Or did you take the next step on that journey? Like, do you feel like that's the biggest thing with coaching a lot, is not only getting someone who knows what they're talking about and their expertise and their opinions and all that stuff is super valuable, but also just the, consistency and the keeping them accountable?
Yeah, we need that in our lives. It's oftentimes we have high motivation in certain moments, but what do we do when the motivation goes away? And that's where a coach kind of fits perfectly into that. Yeah. And it's reminders. Oftentimes if you have a coach that you talk to weekly, say if we talk every Thursday, on Tuesday, we're going to talk on Thursday. And you don't want to call me, we're not going to talk on Thursday. And you don't want to say, I've done nothing. So there's that natural motivation to say, well, I want to work on stuff so that I can, one, see that I've made some progress, but also two, not feel like I'm wasting the coach's time or my time. That's what a lot of people end up saying, is like just having a coach changes their mindset about what's possible for them.
It's almost like I don't know if you've ever heard of this, the sunk cost bias, where if you pay for something, you associate more value to that thing, versus if you signed up for a personal training class and get three free classes. I chose the hardest 3 words there to say, but 3 free classes, you might not show up to 2 of the classes because it's free. But if you were to pay $50 per class, you would associate more value with the class because there's a sunk cost involved.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. A lot of people do that, and it kind of helps them with their life of associating value just because they spent some money. Money doesn't equate to value a lot of the times, so if they did put that monetary value in it, they perceive it as more valuable.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is too, whenever it comes to when you pay for something, again, it feels more committing as opposed to I'm curious. When you sign up for a free, click here to sign up for a free thing, it feels very much like non-committal, but once you commit to it, then there's this, it is what it is. It motivates people, but there's pain in the sense of shame and regret of I paid for this, but didn't use it. Like it's, like all the time people buy spinach at the grocery store, but they don't eat it in time and they throw it away. So then people or bananas. So people start eating more spinach just because they have it, because they don't want to waste it, because they work hard for their money. And I want to make sure that people get everything they get, like I said, get as much as possible from me, not just the money they paid for.
Yeah. Some people will hear like online coaching and they think, the snake oil salesman sort of thing, or they might be getting scamming people out of money. And honestly, they might be right half the time. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are out there just to get people's money and really don't care about the value. I know just from talking with you and like that, your motivation is to provide value, whether someone's paying or not. So I know you're not that, but how do you go about setting yourself apart, online from those people that might perceive as that?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you bringing up this point because it's very true, and it's kind of every industry. There's always this sense of empty promises that trigger, that speak to the pain that most people have when they go to hire a coach. They make these, if you want the best relationship you've ever had, if you want to make $10,000 a month, if you want to publish your own book in 30 days, it speaks to the pain so much that people then get roped into it, and then it becomes a program that's for everybody, which means it's actually not for you.
Yep.
But my goal is to actually have a call with you. We talk about where you've been, where you want to be, and make it individualized for you. Even the assessments are individualized for every single person I work with. So I'm not going to make empty promises because the promises are related to work that needs to be done, not just a guarantee of if you get into my wheel, you will automatically start making more money, start automatically having a better relationship. That's just not realistic, but it speaks so much to the pain that people fall into it.
Yeah. Speaking to that, how do you kind of touched on this a little bit about who you listen to and stuff, but how do you invest in yourself, both professionally and personally, of growth and like coaching, any of that? Do you have any mentors that you've had as coaches or anything like that?
Yeah, so I've had so there's a lot of previous motivational speakers. So Jim Rohn is a speaker, Tony Robbins, obviously, Zig Ziglar. I'm going to leave out a bunch of names because they've all, Simon Sinek, they're not coaches in that regard, but really a bunch of authors. And so I just, tried to focus on learning and growing as much as possible. And, I've had coaches throughout the years. I've fallen into that and not being critical, right? I mean, some of these coaches probably have outstanding success, so I never want to put anybody down. Yeah. I'm here to lift everybody up. Mm-hmm. Nobody needs to fall down for me to come up, So, but I've had coaches that the program didn't work for me. Now, I spent $10,000 on that program, and it didn't work for me, quote unquote, but I learned. Mm-hmm. So maybe I paid $10,000 to learn as opposed to try to get so many clients, those kind of things. So I've had some great coaches. I have mentors. I have people that I confide in, super close. But I spend most of my time listening to podcasts, so Rob Dial, Mindset Mentor, Joe Rogan's great. Chris Williamson's great. There's a lot of guys. Eddie Pinheiro are just all people that I just kind of learn from and listen to just because I'm personally growing every day in my life. So I spend time reading books, and I have plans to every year I set plans to read books. So many books per year, right? So I have like 26 books this year that I'm focusing on reading and just trying to get, whether it's audio or actual, hard paper, books in my hand. So it's just honestly this loving the pursuit of constantly growing so that, one, I can be a better person for the people in my life, but I can also be a better coach for anybody that I get to work with.
As especially in my regard as creatives, and I would associate you with being a creative as well. You're just a creative with your mind more than anything. We like to be out shooting the images and doing the cool, fun stuff, speaking on stage like what you do, recording podcasts and all that stuff. But to do that, you have to make a business sustainable and, successful, whatever success means to you, we have to learn the business side of things as well. Is there anything that you, how you navigate the business side of, speaking or online coaching and stuff? What have you learned about that? And what are your least and favorite parts of the whole business side of doing all this?
Yeah. So, I've had to really kind of understand my own strengths and what I'm great at. And there are things that take me 4 hours to do that if I ask the right person, it would take 30 minutes, you being one of those people. What would take me hours and hours and hours to try to figure out how to edit and record and do all these different things you're doing in 10 minutes, which is a credit to you, not because it's less work, but you actually have the knowledge, the skills, the brain capacity to even think about all the things you're doing. And so I started to just, instead of try to become everything my business needed, I started to really kind of recognize what I was doing well, not what was easy, but what I was doing well.
Yeah.
And then have other people come along with me and help, because nobody's doing anything on their own. I'm very aware of that. And so even when we were talking earlier about the podcast was on my own, I was learning and asking, so there's always people come along with you. But my biggest piece of advice is admit learn your strengths, admit your weaknesses, and then either get better with your weaknesses or find somebody around you who can help you with that. And some of the favorite things that I get to do are really just talking to my clients and even, talking about speaking engagements. When people say, what are your topics that you like to talk about? I have a little one-pager thing. But being able to actually talk about it, like all of this energy comes out of me. Yeah. And so I realize that's my favorite piece. The least favorite piece is some of the contract negotiations that come from all these different things.
Yeah.
Charging for people. There's sometimes where I charge for what I do. And there's people who say I don't have the money for it. That's hard for me.
Yeah.
Because I want to just help. But I also, again, we've already talked about the financial piece of it. So that's probably the least favorite part of it is the business side of it. Being able to offer the value and be able to pour into people is without a doubt my favorite piece.
What do you, and this is me asking personally, like I'm one of those people who I've tried to do everything in my business myself. And I'm finding we got Naaman back here helping, I'm finding just like it's common sense, if you have other people to help you, then you can like divide and conquer almost, but you got to find those right people to do that. How did you go about doing that other than making a Facebook post, to get me? But like looking for the right people is something that I feel like is a pain point in all business across the boards. But for me, like right now, I'm in a kind of a season of growing and trying to expand a little bit. How could I look for the right people and make sure I'm making the right investments in people?
Yeah. Well, if you can find people who align with your values, your business values, but your personal values, and like you and I could talk about literally anything.
Yeah.
Right? And this is the kind of the business, quote unquote, business relationship that's the only ones that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
If I feel like somebody is going to be bothered by the work and by hustling and by, doing some of that, it's probably not the right fit. If somebody's trying to get something more than give something, it's probably not going to be the right fit. So you kind of have to have that sense of core values that you have in the person as a person. What we do will always show up, right? So every time I use this analogy all the time, but every time you squeeze an orange, you get orange juice.
Yeah.
So if somebody interviews you really well, but they fool you, and then when they get here, then they become that self-absorbed, I'm going to work as little as I have to instead of as much as I can. You just find people who just naturally through conversation and through some of what they do, right? You watch their work. So when I put that Facebook post out there, multiple people said your name is like not great quality. They did say great quality, but the thing that stuck out the most was the type of person that you are. So then I looked up what you're doing, and obviously we have similar mindsets. We had one phone call, and we were ready to go that second when we first started talking. Those are the type of people that I surround myself with, not people who can do something for me, people who want to do something with me.
Yeah. I think also just speaking to that from my perspective too, like in my business, I try to frame it as you're giving me an opportunity. Like I'm not being hired to, technically, yes, I'm being hired to shoot stuff. Like, but I feel like you are giving me the opportunity to help you level up what you're doing. And I feel like we have that similar mindset of like, if you pay me any amount of money, I'm going to give you 3 times that money, or I'm going to at least try to in value back than what you're paying me. So if I charge $10,000 for a project, I'm going to try to give you $20,000 worth of value or $30,000 worth of value. It might not be a 1-to-1 ratio of like, this correlates to a direct sale right here. I don't know, just kind of in life, we've talked about this a lot off camera and stuff, and just providing value to people and that is the driver of what I'm doing. I go about things as delivering value for capturing memories and photos or, helping you. You've done 114 podcasts on your own, consistency. So that shows me you're obviously dedicated to this. And maybe the one piece that you're lacking is taking the quality up to the next level. And if I can be the one to help you do that, and then you succeed even more from what you're already doing, that makes me feel so much better, whether I'm being paid or not. Not that you should not pay me, but like the money is totally secondary. And I feel like that's the same thing with you. Like the speaking engagements and the coaching and stuff, you would want to be doing that anyways. But the unfortunate side of that coin is you got to make a living doing it. So that's I think across the board in all business, the charging, especially for creatives and people like you, that you are what's being sold essentially. When people hire me to take their photos, they're getting my eye and my brain. The camera I could hand to anybody and they're not going to get the same image because they don't have that. You're hiring for what you get, the value that you get, and the experience that you get doing it.
Well, one thing that the way that the label I would put on that for us, both of us feel gratitude towards each other. So if you find people who are grateful that you gave them the chance, and you're grateful that they're with your team, there's this mutual effort that won't be counted, right? It's effort given freely out of gratitude. And so even when we talk about recording episodes, like I consider you and your family in your life, not just me and my schedule. But when two people consider each other, there's more gratitude there. That whatever you're going to produce together is going to be 10x if you felt like two people were getting things from each other. So that would be my only suggestion as well. If anybody's trying to build relationships and collaborate, have it be rooted in gratitude, because then the rest of it's just fun. You stop counting the cost, and you actually probably end up giving more to the other person than what you had talked about.
Yeah.
And like I told you, whatever amount we talked about, as I continue to scale, I'm going to pay you more to do the exact same thing. But that comes from gratitude, not out of obligation.
But then that's also incentive,
Sure.
If I was going to go 90%, that gives me incentive to go 100% because that 10% might make the difference of that. So that's pretty cool too.
Yeah.
And I would also just like to say on a personal note, every time I talk with you, you just always say thank you. That's something I think is missing a lot these days. And I respond with thanks for the opportunity because that's how I feel. You could see stuff as either, oh, this is work or this is an opportunity. And that kind of translates in life too, of like something comes up unexpected. It's either an obstacle or an opportunity. So I choose if I'm taking on things, it's good. That's a good thing. Having business is a good thing as a solo business dude, So I appreciate the opportunity that you've given me and continue to give me too. And I can't wait to see where all this stuff goes.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that a little more here at the end. Social media plays a big role these days in reaching potential clients. It's probably where you've got the majority of, people see you and see your face and see your message and all those things. How do you use social media to reach those people who you're trying to target? We specifically talked about that whenever you got here this morning about the demographics and all the intentionally trying to reach these people. How do you go about that, and how have you went about that? And do you have any plans to change that going forward?
Yeah, so social media for me has never really been it's changed over the years, right? I started with MySpace and Facebook, and when it first came out, right, where somebody was literally posting on my wall to ask how I was doing. There wasn't a messaging component, right? So it's changed over time. But over the last 10 years, 11 years now, I've used it the same way, to inspire, to encourage, and to influence, not to gloat, not to elevate, right? People see the highlight reels all the time of people's lives, and that's not really what I do. You're never going to see a car. You're never going to see a house. You're never going to see a lake. You're never going to see anything that isn't just to inspire people, because I get it. There's not a lot of us on social media that are doing that. A lot of social media can kind of turn into a negative spiral. I know some people that deactivate social media just because they need a mental break from it. Yeah. So throughout the platforms, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or Twitter and now TikTok and whatever, the goal is just to add value to everybody everywhere. And so who I'm reaching has kind of changed over the years. So in the beginning, it was just anybody who was one of my friends on one of those platforms. Now it's more people who feel like they need whatever I offer, right? Whatever value I can provide. So I work with people a lot that I don't necessarily try to target, but I think I'm going to, this is what we were talking about before, focus more on targeting the messages, not targeting in the sense of singling out, but speaking to the people who I can provide the most value to, not just to everybody. So that's really hasn't really been a priority up to this point, but really trying to make sure that the podcast episodes, the social media posts, all of it is really speaking the best to the people that are going to get the most value from what I'm sharing.
You said something after the first episode, and you said that me like doing everything that I'm doing and how I'm doing it has opened your eyes to putting a little bit more effort into being intentional with this stuff. And I told you that was the best compliment you could ever do, because my goal, my purpose, I feel like, is to be the constant high quality. Like, I want my life to be high quality. I want my video production stuff to be high quality. I want my photography to be high quality. I want to surround myself with high quality people that are going to enhance that. So for me, that was just like one of those, like, what I'm putting out, it feels good to have that encouragement and like that acknowledged, from another person who I look up to you. Like, you have a lot of similarities to me and mindset, and you're a little bit farther along in your career than I am. So it's just good to have some validation sometimes. And I guess that for anyone listening out there, if you think something good about someone, like, tell them, it goes a long way. Yeah. I consider myself a pretty confident person. I'm pretty confident in what I'm doing. I got a good, successful business. I've started everything from the ground up, but even the most confident people need a little encouragement sometimes, and that was at a time where my business was actually at a little bit of a dip, and we kind of had that conversation. And I know that's not why you said that, but it totally like helped me change. And I'm like helping out people who are grateful for you helping them. It goes a long way.
Yeah.
And you kind of mentioned that in one of your episodes about, telling thank you to the cashier at the store, like just something as small as thanks for being here, doing your job, like thank you for choosing to come to work today. Because of that, it's helping me provide my family with food or, do whatever. So like switching your mindset a little bit to that. And that's what you have 117 episodes now talking about. So I would highly encourage anyone out there listening to this to go check out his podcast. It has helped me just within the 3 episodes that we've recorded. I've went back and listened to them as much as I can as an outsider looking in. Like, I went for a run last night, I was telling you, and I listened to your podcast. I recorded the whole podcast and edited the podcast. So I've heard this 4 or 5 times, but it was good to just hear it while I'm kind of distracted running and like just making like little mental notes throughout it. Like, I could do that more. I could be more grateful to Mary and what she does, trying to help me mow the lawn or help me do this, or, and it's helped just in the past couple of weeks in my life personally. So thank you for that. And I would definitely encourage anyone out there to not only listen to his podcast and watch it, but like do that in your life. Small little changes can make a really big difference. And that goes back to the consistency thing too, that we talked about.
Yeah. And I'll expand a little bit on that comment that you're referencing that I made about inspiring me to, it was kind of up my game, but also be more intentional is, there are people in my life that at the same timing for me, right? So we talk about timing, and that was actually an episode we recorded today about time and timing, but really I didn't know what was going on for you, right? So it wasn't a response to something that I knew about you that I said that. But it also comes from a place of that I have some people in my life that really believe in me. And this is me backing up their belief in me. Now, my belief is also expanded by their belief, right? So it's kind of like this great nurturing thing back and forth. But it was also like, okay, you know what? These people have said, you can do this. And one of the quotes that I've heard from some of these people is that my superpower, right? So be you because it's your superpower. I kind of heard that, but didn't necessarily quite believe in it. But like, it's just that person's belief in me saying like, you don't have to be someone else. You just have to just be you. And the timing of that comment from them, but then also you pouring into it as much as you're pouring into it. Like, I want to prove them right. I want to prove you right. And that inspires me to be better, grow, invest more time, just get better at it all together. So it really is in gratitude for the support and effort, that's where that comment came from, is just wanting to get better, not because it was bad, but I just want to prove you guys right that I actually believe.
That's awesome. And it's much appreciated. So going from the grateful for what we have, grateful for the work, grateful for each other, the opposite side of that, some setbacks in life. I know a lot of people go through setbacks. Pretty much everybody goes through some sort of setback in your life. What are maybe some setbacks that you've went through, and how did you turn that into a positive or work through the setback, to minimize the amount of pain that could cause?
Yeah, so it's the real part of life. Oftentimes I have a lot of people say, you're the gratitude guy. You only see the great things in life. Only good things are happening to you, so on and so forth. Now, obviously, that's not real. That's not true. There's been heartbreak over the years, right? And so relationship heartbreak, but I've learned really the gratitude being in my heart of being somebody that lives in gratitude all the time, not just somebody who has a gratitude practice, has really helped me understand, I can't hate the experiences that have shaped me if they've shaped me to the person that I am today. So I've learned through resiliency, through grit, through all these things, whether it's heartbreak, whether it's, thought I was going to get a certain job, didn't get it, whether it was just going through just tough times of being blamed for things or accused of things that weren't happening or didn't happen, just the character threats that come up every once in a while. But then there's the business side of it too, to where I invested in coaches and I thought I was going to have all these things, and all that left me with was financial trouble. This optimism that if I did X, then I was going to get Y. It didn't happen multiple times, right? And so all this money I'd saved and earned and all that I was super excited about, complete failures. Now, in the sense of the money. But what I learned, two things. One, this is probably the biggest revelation of which is kind of counterproductive to coaches. But I'm going to be honest, like I said, I'm going to give you everything. If a coach comes out and says that you need him, it's probably not the right one for you. Because I fell into a trap, feeling like my business wasn't growing because I didn't have a coach. But the business wasn't growing because I wasn't working hard enough. Yeah. I thought they were going to come save me. Their strategies were going to help. Now, can a coach help? Yes. But they can't be the reason, the only reason why it works. So that has been some of the financial piece of it. I've invested probably $40,000 in coaches, and I don't have one right now, if that tells you anything, right? They've taught me a lot of things along the way. Nothing negative to say about any of them. I own the lack of work, right, that I was doing during that chapter because I was relying too much on them and not enough on me, right? And I'd rather earn it than have it be given to me. But I had to learn that lesson by thinking it was going to be easy, So then the other piece to this is, so I've had a lot of kind of physical pain over the last 2 years. So when life's easy, when you can do what you want, when you want, where you want, it's hard to talk about being grateful for things for people who are also going through adversity when I'm not going through any. So for the last 2 years, I've had over 5 knee surgeries. Haven't been able to exercise like I normally do. Haven't been able to walk. Haven't been able to walk my dogs. Haven't been able to do any of my normal physical activities. And it was my everyday, all day life. So my whole life in that regard got flipped upside down. Now it affected my mentality for sure. Now it was a slow creep into my mentality, but I realized it's time to walk the walk and talk the talk, So meet people who are going through a tough time, talk to them about, what it feels like for me to be sitting on a couch with, first of all, I don't sit on a couch. I don't watch TV, but sitting on a couch for almost 2 straight years with my leg elevated with ice. I had that this morning before I came down. And that's how I spent my morning, was stretching and sitting with ice on my knee, that I've been doing almost every day for the last 2 years. So that part's been mentally a trouble for me, but it's also been, I haven't been able to do speaking gigs. So I couldn't stand, I couldn't walk, I couldn't travel, I couldn't do all those things. So the whole business kind of got pivoted to what can I do online, which is a big challenge for me too. So it just, again, this quote of any strong why can endure anyhow. And I was like, I just got to find a different way to do it, right? Yeah. So I started doing some things differently. I'm hopeful, right, and optimistic that it won't always be this way. But that's the thing that's kept me through, is this is a chapter, not this is my life. And that's what's really helped me kind of move beyond some of the struggles, whether it's in a relationship, not being in one, whatever it is, kind of understanding that who I am now is who I'm going to bring into the relationship. It's going to be, I'm not all of a sudden going to be in a better headspace with external something happening in my life. So I needed to understand like who I am and what I am. And then working through these episodes has helped me do that too, right? So I've poured more into serving other people, which is the business, but it's actually just serving other people.
Looking forward from all of that, you're potentially getting a little better with the knee, so you can start to maybe look forward a little bit more. What are some goals for your business and for yourself that you've got? I'm not really a fan of the 10-year goals.
Sure.
Because it seems just like way too far, and things change so much these days. Like online 10 years ago was a vastly different place than what it is right now, even 2 or 3 years ago. So things are changing at a much faster pace, maybe 2-year goal or up to 5-year goal. Personally, professionally, what do you see, or what are you trying to plan for? Are you even a fan of setting those goals?
Yeah, so I am. I agree with you on the 10 to 15-year goal is really more, it's an idea. It's something you want to accomplish, but putting it to be 10 years just means you're not willing to work for it sooner, truthfully. And now if you don't feel like you can accomplish it then what is the 1-year goal that helps you get to your 10-year goal? So I like to break it down to, even if I have a 15-year plan, what am I doing today to move closer to that? So so there's definitely personal and professional goals, right? So kind of the personal thing is obviously being in a relationship, being able to add value to her life and, build a family is definitely something I want to be doing over the next 5 years, 2 years, 3 years, whatever that looks like. But not necessarily being caught up in goals in that, right? Just being present every day with her for that. That is a constant growth. And we've talked a little bit about that, even some today, just around how I want to show up for her. And honestly, I feel like that's the reason why I'm not in one yet is being the person that I want to be for her, whoever she is, right, out there in the world. I want to bring my best. And I feel like the things that I've gone through in my life are helping me be at my best for her. But while I'm still going to continue to grow. Yeah. So obviously having that side of my life would be great. And then the professional side of things, really, it's about, so again, I'm a healthcare leader, but I'm also doing some of this. And so I have a children's book coming out soon this year in 2024, kind of timing a little unknown for that still. But so children's book coming out there. And then, these podcasts and really growing and scaling this and reaching more people is really kind of the goal. I don't have a number necessarily that I want to reach to. But having 3 to 4 speaking engagements per month is something that I'm working on too. That I would say over the next year or two, I'd like to have that many consistently. And working on that, we've talked about quite a few different ones over in September and October, and but having a consistent kind of group of talks every month would be a big goal for me. But there is another leadership book that I'm working on as well, kind of on the side, it was in the shadows until I just said it. But I am working on that too, just because I feel like there's so much opportunity to lead with intention and lead different types of people. So generational leadership is kind of one of the main topics with that. And it's not just healthcare, it's just people in general, so being able to add more value is really the goal. What about you?
I'm just trying to scale. I'm just kind of in this growth season. It's just figuring out. It's really hard. I'm the personality type. I want to do everything myself to prove it to myself that I can do it. But that is not the best way to scale a business up. And last year, I was fortunate enough to essentially 8 months straight, I had 0 days off. I learned last year by doing that I do not want to do that to myself again. And I don't want to do that to my family again, because I've started to realize and reflect on what that causes negatively on the back end. Monetarily, great. And as far as practicing with your camera, what's better than to be paid to practice, And that's how I kind of see all of everything, the opportunities you give me. So the podcast that I'm doing for you is slightly different than all the other podcasts that I've produced. So that gives me for one, I want to see how me producing a podcast for you helps your viewership. Does the quality really matter? And I think we've seen that jump up a little bit. So that stuff is just validating for me to try things. And I feel like I'm getting paid to practice because I really actually love what I do. And I'm grateful to be able to say that. I get to be creative for a living. But that also has some negatives. I have to be creative every day. Or at least I think I do, So I put some pressure on myself for that. And so, like I made my business Sweno Visuals. It's literally my name because I wanted to be proud of my work and put my name on it. But then I'm like, it gets to the point of scaling that business up a little bit. And if I just hired some random person to shoot for me and they don't do a good job, their standard is not where I want it to be for my business, my name is on it. So that has held me back a lot in putting the faith in someone else. I try to be a pretty trusting person, but it's different when it's your business and your livelihood. I'm the sole income for my family. I got 3 kids. We got a house. I got to make stuff happen. And if me bringing on someone who doesn't have the same values like we talked about earlier is going to negatively impact that, I would just rather do it myself. So this is a perfect example to talk about. I know he's in the room here, but Naaman, a good example of this is he's a younger kid. He's 20 years old, right? 20 years old. He was homeschooled. He lives about 25 minutes away from here and had just seen some of my stuff online. And he had reached out to me and I was like, it was during that crazy busy season. And I was like, I don't know what I could have you help me with right now. He just offered, if you need me to do anything, carry equipment, anything, just let me know. I would just like to be around it, which is great. For one, to hear from someone who's that young, who wants that and has the drive to do it. So I was like, I don't know, honestly, what I could have you do right now. So message me back here in a couple months, which was kind of a test for him is he going to be consistent with it? But I honestly didn't know what I would have him help me with because I was running frantically to just keep up. It was like one of those drowning moments where you're just trying to tread water a little bit. That's what I kind of felt like. So then in the exact amount of time that I asked him to, he messaged back and I was like, still kind of going crazy. I know I said this, but can you message me back in a couple more months? And he did. And I was like, okay, this is the 3rd time he's reached back out. He's done everything I've asked of him. Let's sit down and have a meeting. So he came down here, sat down with me, and I was like, my business isn't at a point where I'm comfortable to take on an employee or anything like that yet. And I don't know if I'm at a point where I would be a good enough leader to do that. So let's figure out how to do some stuff together. Like we went out and took some photos. I took some photos of him just to know my process a little bit. On the other side of the camera, I think that's a really big thing that a lot of photographers miss out on is getting their photo taken and what the person does and how they do it, how they direct people. So in my profession, that's something I feel like a lot of photographers could learn from is being on the other side of the camera and me like being on camera like this and knowing that I get nervous. I've made over 1,000 videos of myself. Most of those are private on the internet now, so that no one can go search them up because they're absolutely terrible. But I've made over 1,000 YouTube videos of me talking. And so you might see me on camera and think that I just sat down and I was just, born confident like this. That's not the case. It's just practice and repetition and doing it. So doing that as a photographer, being in front of the camera, putting yourself in the client's shoes, then you know what they're going to feel like whenever you start taking that photo. If you ask them to stand up against the wall, you know what awkward positions that those are, and you can help them out of that. So we did that, got some good photos of him, and then I asked him about, being a associate photographer sort of role. So where I'm not actually taking on an employee with my business, I'm taking on someone who can operate under my business with my name, all the things, but I'm not paying him a salary yet, anything like that. But whenever I do have him, I'm paying him for his time, energy, effort, all those things. So it's a win-win for both of us at this point. And then for the last about a year, little over a year, I guess, we've been doing that more and more, just kind of seeing, and he's been nothing but helpful. Every time we've ever had anything, just drops everything, helps unload equipment, load equipment, set stuff up, no questions asked whatsoever. So that is a perfect example of what you were talking about earlier, where you find the right person that aligns with you on a deeper level than the technical. Because I can teach you the technical. That's what I do. So I actually offer that as a service right now, if anybody out there wants that. So, coaching as far as creativity and photography and video stuff, I now offer that as a service as well. But this kind of opened my eyes to that. Is like, I can teach whoever to do the thing. I cannot teach them to be a good human being. So being a good human being is the baseline for me. I don't want someone who is the best photographer ever, who I have to worry about people complaining because they're rude to them. The work isn't the only thing that matters. I think you should have a high level of work at some point, but we can get you there. The technical, that stuff can be taught, but I can't make you be a good human being. So This is the season that I'm in right now. I have Naaman and I have Becca. Seeing other people succeed is like the best thing ever. And knowing that, like, for instance, he came to me because he really liked what I did, whether that was the style that I did or whatever, and knowing that now I'm going to teach him to do the exact same thing, and he might surpass me. He might be better than me, but knowing that he actually is investing in me by spending time with me, getting a desk and moving into the office and all of that makes me feel great and pushes me even more to want him to succeed. And then we can both level up the business, and then he can benefit more from me taking that initial risk. So that was a 30-minute rant right there. But this whole season that I'm in right now is just like figuring out who those people are and how we can benefit each other the best. I don't want to take away from anybody's stuff, whether it's competition with other photographers. I don't think that. I have a private Facebook group. It's called the Sweno Creative Academy. I'm just always putting out tips, like behind the scenes of lighting setups, or if I'm on a photo shoot, snapping a photo, So I'm actively trying to give away information for free if someone wants it.
Yeah.
I don't see things as like competition. I'm confident in my work, that my work's going to stand out. I'm confident in myself that I'm going to provide the experience that is great. So if you don't like the work, you'll hopefully at least like the experience. And hopefully you like the experience and the work. So that's my goal. My goal is to just continue leveling up and just being better overall, and also learning to take time off a little bit and not be so caught up in, every week I have to be shooting something, editing something, shooting something, editing something. So taking breaks is almost as big of a deal as pushing yourself all the time. There's Chris and Alex, they had a quote in their podcast that was, "There's no such thing as overworked. There is such thing as under-rested," So I've definitely felt that, and I've put that on myself a lot. So I'm actively trying to work on that right now. I do a lot, and I know that I do a lot, and I can handle a lot, but sometimes I push myself too far, and that's the hardest thing for me. A lot of people, the hardest thing for them is getting started or trying something. That's never been a problem for me. I have the exact opposite problem, is where I don't know when to pull back. I don't know when until I'm so far gone that I need to take this little break right here. Even if it's just a day where I just sit at home, I'm really into the UFC, so like watching UFC or like go for a run. I do that consistently, but I don't do that as a break. I do that as I need to learn more information, so I listen to podcasts and audiobooks and stuff. So I just need to learn when to pull back. Maybe you can help me with that down the line.
Yeah, well, honestly, I'm glad you brought up we've talked about this a couple of times. We are in different spaces, but we're both helping people. We're both serving people. And so when you were referencing having the photographer be on the other side of the lens and how you can relate. So even as far as just even a goal of having, really 10 coaching clients a month is really something I'd like to do. I could have more, but to really serve them, because I've been coached by coaches who have 100 people, and you feel like you're one of 100.
You don't have the time to have it being personalized to you.
Yeah. So I don't want to say it's personalized, but then try to do it to 1,000 people. It just doesn't work, right? So being able to offer 10, knowing that I know the fear they have of, is this like one of those, the others, right? And so I can speak to it. And that's again, we're talking human things here, just whether it's in photography or in just self-development and self-actualization. So that's the cool part about hearing what you say. I'm like, it's exactly what I'm inspired to do is not that I'm not wanting to be the other coaches because they're great coaches, but I just don't want to be the same type of program. I want to offer it in a different way.
That's what's cool about your podcast. And I'm not saying this just because you're right here across from me. Hearing what you talk about in your podcast, it's almost like validation for what I'm trying to do from hearing it from a different perspective. Sometimes I can sit here in my own head and be like, I think I'm doing the right thing. I think I'm doing this right. Or I think I might be messing up in this area. Or I think maybe I could do this differently. And then hearing it from someone else's perspective, I think that is the benefit of surrounding yourself with not only friends that are good in your real life, but like online friends, someone who follows you online and sees your podcast and listens to you associate yourself with that person. Like if you watch a Joe Rogan podcast, it feels like you're sitting in the room hanging out with your buddies, Maybe you won't quite get as contact high from watching it as you would in the room, but like those sorts of things. That's the benefit of podcasts is you get to hear people talk and hear their thoughts over an extended amount of time sometimes. And it just is really good to be working with someone who is on the same wavelength. And I think that's something I could honestly intentionally do more of is like search out those people who are on the same wavelength and work with more people like that. Nothing negative about anybody I've worked with, but like there's those people that you meet. I think this has happened one other time, like in my life, as far as working with someone where as soon as we had that first phone call, I was super excited. And I was like, this is going to be something awesome. Like as soon as we started talking, hey, you listen to this podcast? I listen to that podcast actually every day. Like we both just are on the same sort of thought process. We do totally different things, but we do some similar things too. I'm doing a lot more public speaking and trying to do more of it. Like it's the same exact thing. Like, so we're both in it to help people. We're both in it for the actual right reason. We both want to be successful, but not at the expense of anybody else. So just finding those people throughout your life that you can resonate with. And if you're fortunate enough to work with them, why not, So piggybacking off of that, self-doubt, going from self-confidence and working on that to self-doubt. Do you experience self-doubt? You're the motivational guy, so clearly you're always in a good mood, right? So what do you do when you experience self-doubt? Because everybody does, whether you're the most positive person in the world or not, people experience self-doubt. What do you do when you experience self-doubt? And what kind of advice would you give someone who may be in that right now?
Yeah. So first of all, if you have self-doubt, it means you're actually pushing yourself beyond where you currently are. So it's a good sign. Self-doubt, self-limiting beliefs, and imposter syndrome. I like to put them all in the same little bucket. And honestly, it's a natural human, it's part of growth. It's a sign of growth. So self-doubt, self-limiting beliefs, and imposter syndrome, again, sign of growth. And, the thing is what you do when you feel that is the differentiator between people who keep going or people who stop. We all experience it. So if you experience it, don't feel like you're going down a wrong path. Recognize that you can use that energy. So what I do is I use that energy to learn more, to study more, to grow more, but I confront it face on as opposed to act like I don't have it. It happens all the time. And truthfully, just even with this podcast, it's how many listeners do you have to have before you stop doubting yourself? Because if it's 1 million, then own it. But if it's 1, then when you get 20, where's the self-doubt? If you still have the self-doubt, then it's not about the listeners at all. It's about your value, what you think you can do, And the thing is, too, another thing that comes in with self-doubt that has kind of come to me a little bit is if you don't feel like you've earned it, you doubt your validity. So, again, the first book, I was like, I don't know. Like, sure, I'll publish it. I published it, and it was like, I don't know if anybody's going to read it. But I didn't feel like I had to work for it. So going for a shortcut will actually increase your self-doubt, which sounds a little counterintuitive, but earning something reduces self-doubt. Self-doubt. So what I do in those moments is when I start to feel that tension, there were times where I was like, I don't know about this podcast episode before I started coming down here. I don't really know. I feel a little anxious about the topic, and I would procrastinate. I would find anything else to do but the thing that was creating self-doubt.
Yep.
So recognize that. So then give yourself recognition after you overcome it. So after you record the episode, whether you read the book, whatever the thing is that you're feeling some self-doubt, as soon as you've overcome it, recognize it instead of just move on, because it's going to keep popping back up. But how we use it is typically going to show up and how we used it last time. Mm-hmm. So I read more. I can tell when I'm starting to get some of that anxious energy and doubt as I pour into it more to overcome it so that I feel like I've earned it more and that I'm a little bit more valuable and more prepared. Because a lot of times self-doubt is feeling unprepared for something, but we can determine how prepared we are for anything in life. So those are the things that I've been doing to try to overcome that, but it still happens every day. Mm-hmm. I've talked to people who are, making $10 million a month, and they talk about they struggle with it too, right? So it's not money's going to remove your self-doubt. It's just this internal struggle, but use it to actually get better at what you're doing instead of shy away and stop doing it altogether.
Yeah. And that's one thing that kind of helped me. I had a conversation with my fiance whenever I was feeling that, and she was like, you're really good at what you do. Like, you've done nothing different. Mm-hmm. You're doing a lot. And that's what I kind of recognized. And I was like, okay, so maybe I just need to refocus. Sometimes it's something as simple as that. I'm trying to do everything. I'm trying to open up this co-working space. I'm trying to do podcasts. I'm doing content. I'm producing content for other people. I'm trying to, get more business and post on social media and do 14 full-time jobs. Maybe I just need to focus on what I'm the best at and do that, which other people are allowing, have the people help me, helps me to try to go in that direction a little bit rather than being like, oh, I can't do that because whatever excuse I have right now, Mm-hmm. So I just needed to refocus. And as soon as I refocused, everything explodes. It's crazy. To your point that you said too about the growth thing, like usually if you're experiencing self-doubt, it's because you're growing. That's exactly what's happening right now. I'm trying to do 14 different things and I'm trying to grow them all. And I just got to focus and do one thing, then move to the next thing, and making that goal list, of what steps are going to get me there versus I need to jump from the ground to that. Sometimes I just try to do that. I try to skip the step 1 through 4 to get to level 5 because I just want to be at level 5.
Yeah.
I'm not good at being a beginner at things. So
yeah. Well, and it's the willingness to be bad at something, right? Mm-hmm. Is the only way you get great at anything. Yep. And it's the difference between good to great is consistency. And if you're relying on the value, so the opposite of doubt, I would say, is affirmation or belief, if you will. If you're relying on external sources to make you believe in yourself or make you have the affirmations that you need, you will not get what you need. It's a recipe for failure every single time. Yeah. So if you recognize and stop and think about, okay, what I'm offering is valuable, but nobody's buying it. If you believe that what you're offering is valuable, it won't be your doubt or your belief in yourself and what you're doing won't be impacted by other people not buying it. Mm-hmm. You may just be offering it to the wrong people. Yeah. So again, that's the recognition of, why do I feel doubtful? Is it because it's not a value, or is it because the people around me don't see it as valuable? And don't confuse the two.
Yeah. You say so good one-liners. It's cool.
I appreciate that.
It could be like a mic drop sort of moment right there.
Yeah.
Switching gears a tiny bit. Mm-hmm. We're getting towards the end of this. How long has it been? Hour and 10 minutes. So we're going to switch to you a little bit here. What would you like to do that you haven't done yet? And do you have any things in place to make that thing happen?
That's a good question. We did not prepare for this podcast, just for the record. Well, I'm assuming we're talking professional probably here, but
I mean, whatever route you want to take it.
Yeah. So being able to have consistent, so a little shift in the podcast that I haven't done yet. In the beginning, I actually started the podcast as interviews, just like this. Didn't think clearly around who was going to be on with me, and then it was kind of all over the place, and then I kind of lost it a little bit. So something I'd like to do is do more interviews like this. It's just finding either the same person doing this remotely is tough. Doing it video, doing it on Zoom or Riverside or whatever it is, So that is something I'd like to shift it towards. Now, obviously, the steps are validity, not my own, but for other people, right? To recognize that this is actually like a professional setup and we could do something that would be, very well done and all of that. So that's a step in that direction for sure. Now the steps being taken, again, obviously is working with you on that. The other piece too is truthfully around, I got to do better with sharing more about the books that I have out there in the world. I really want to write more books. Again, it's just because it's naturally, I think about it all the time and I want to kind of put it out there more. So, but really kind of having like a series of books. The children's books I'm super passionate about because reaching kids, reaching the parents also through the kids, but also reaching kids and getting gratitude into their life sooner. And so obviously we have one book coming, but working with a publisher to get the series of books. And so every goal that I have out there, I have all these little micro steps because I know just having the goal is a wish. It's not a plan, know? So, but yeah, those are a couple things for sure over the next short period of time that I haven't done yet. Children's book hasn't come out yet and really getting good at the interviews like this.
Is there anything you can say about the kids' book that's coming out? Do you have any sort of a time frame when that would be? Because I feel like I have a lot of people that listen to this that would potentially be interested in that.
Yeah. So it's probably in the next 3 months. So it's about a dog. His name is Gus. So the main title of the book is going to be Gus the Grateful Golden. And we're going to kind of take you on a journey and an adventure with Gus through different aspects of his life and how gratitude shows up for him in a lot of different ways, because we know, truthfully, dogs are probably the most grateful creatures. And so that's really the goal, is to kind of spread the word of gratitude through the kids. But again, next couple months, look for Gus the Grateful Golden.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll make content around the book.
Sure. Yeah. You'll see it.
So to wrap up here, a couple quotes and a couple words that I want to just get your thoughts and opinions on. The first one is rumination, which is essentially obsessing over your own pain or constantly talking or thinking about your problems or worst case scenarios. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it's creates certainty and it's comfortable. Now the battle of the kind of the push against rumination is one, recognizing when you're creating your own downward spiral and recognizing that there is actually light if you just look up, bring your shoulders back and look up, that there is another way. Because the rumination piece it's kind of a perpetuating cycle, basically, right? Talking about problems. But I'll be honest, if you're recognizing your problem, the reason why you're recognizing that it's a problem is because you think it could be different. So I'm going to spin rumination around kind of on itself a little bit of, if you didn't think it was a problem, you wouldn't be talking about it. So if it's a problem, you know it can be different. So seek somebody who can help you get out of that spiral and flip your problem and turn it into maybe the reason why you succeed, or like you talked about earlier, obstacles versus opportunities.
Yeah. And that's something you talk about a lot on your podcast, is taking something that potentially could be a negative and turning it into a positive, turning it into at least something other than a negative. And I feel like, depression is running rampant in our world right now. Some of it is like online stuff. Some of it is people comparing themselves to other people. And, you see the Instagram models with the houses and the cars and all that stuff. It's unrealistic for 99% of the population, probably more than that. But they see that and they're like, oh, if they're doing it, I'm not doing that. I'm struggling to get a job and, do stuff like that. So if you're in that sort of thought process, just know that it can be different. You can think differently and you can intentionally think differently. And that is what your podcast basically is helping people to think a little differently. So if you're in that, anyone out there listening to this is in a rumination stage where you think everything's terrible and it's always just going to be terrible, there is a better way to think. And I suggest TJ's podcast.
Yeah.
The next one is talking about a goal versus putting actions towards the goal.
Yeah, so talking about it, the gap between there is doubt, right? So there's the I want it, but I don't think I can have it. That's really the gap between those two things. And so Chris also talks about talking about the thing isn't doing the thing. So we often give ourselves more credit when we're like, well, I read a lot this weekend about the business I want to start or the relationship I want to have, but not putting in the work isn't actually doing the thing. So reading about the thing is an important process, but just don't confuse reading about it and thinking about it and wishing for it as actually doing it. So it's willing to take the risk, willing to take the action. So thinking about something doesn't require a plan. Sometimes it's the plan that's in the middle there, the actually taking action. So sometimes people struggle with the first step. Like, I know I want to do something, but I don't know how to get started. These are also some of the coaching clients I work with, right? But it's understanding too, it's the first step may be scary, right? It's not going to be easy. But it's like once we get past that first step, then we realize, oh, well, I can actually do this. So again, it's really recognizing what is that stop and the thing stopping you. And typically it is going to be that self-doubt, self-limiting beliefs.
Yep. Reducing barriers between you and getting the thing done. It can be used across the board, any aspect of your life, basically. And I saw something from Chris actually this morning. That's why I added this on the podcast. Was he said to basically shorten the amount of time between the first initial thought, and the first time you start it, as much as possible. That way you don't even give yourself time to second guess yourself. You know, I agree to that to an extent, because you should have some sort of a plan if you're wanting the thing to be successful or work for any amount of time whatsoever. But I understand the thought process of that, of like, you essentially bypass all the second thought, you know, because you don't give yourself time to do that.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of people like on a weekend, they say, I'm going to start my diet on Monday.
Yeah.
Then they eat as much as possible that goes against their diet on Monday. So now they have a further climb than if they just would have started right then and there.
Right. Right.
So, but again, if you root purpose, and not to go back to the podcast topics, but if you root purpose from the thought, not just, so typically what we think is what we feel is what we choose, right? So if what you're thinking is in alignment with what you want and it makes you feel good, you're going to make good choices. If you're thinking in a sad and a depressed and an anxious and a worried state, you're going to feel those things, and then you're going to make choices that affirm those things.
Yep.
So if you can find a way to interrupt that pattern, right, and then intercept purpose into that. So like, I'm thinking this, the first step I'm going to take is this. It's scary, but I know the people that I love or that I'm grateful for are going to benefit from it. That becomes a stepping stone for you instead of a wall preventing you from taking that first step.
Yeah. Last one, insecurities.
Yep.
Everyone has them about something, some sort of something. What should people do to minimize them or turn them into strengths?
Sure. So insecurities can sometimes come from comparison. I'm not necessarily sure on kind of where we're going with them, but I think sometimes it could be, but it can be rooted to comparison. And so the number one thing, so there's a great quote about comparison is a thief of joy. But what I would say there is, if you find yourself comparing yourself to others, it's because you're not spending enough time understanding yourself. Because we compare ourselves to others to understand ourselves better, but we don't think of it that way. We judge ourselves based on the appearance of others, which is kind of us learning more about ourselves.
Yeah.
So if you find yourself being insecure about something, understand kind of, is that something that was true about you? Is it something that is true about you? And how can you just tackle it, right? Face it head on. And how do you make it a strength? And so public speaking makes people nervous. Why is that an issue? Because you're afraid of what somebody's going to think of you. Well, you don't even know if they've thought it. Like, is it even real, right? Is it something you've thought up, or is it reality? And if you've gone up and because I've talked to people all the time who have insecurities about things that they do every day. I'm like, well, what is it? They're like, well, I'm nervous and I'm terrified and all these things every single time. It's the story we keep telling ourselves.
Yeah.
So understand, is this insecurity real, or is it a perceived something? And are you more comfortable being insecure about it than you would be being secure about it? Because then you'll kind of hang on to the insecurity.
Yeah.
The things that we're insecure about are things that we don't accept about ourselves typically, or things that we've hated about ourselves that we wish were different, that aren't going to be different because it's something about us, right? For me, physical appearance has always been a thing that I've always been insecure about, no matter how I look. It has nothing to do with what anybody else says. So nobody else is going to offer you security to your insecurity if you're insecure if you're not accepting who you are and loving yourself for who you are. Other people have already moved on and they love you for who you are. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes our own insecurity is the thing that we're not willing to just own and accept and move past, right? Mm-hmm. And so like we're judging ourselves and we're often our toughest critics. But that's what these things kind of rooted into is what else is going to change? So if you had a head full of hair, would you be secure about your hair transplant that you got? Mm. Right? Probably not. You'd be insecure about it.
I'd just be paying a bunch more on shampoo,
Right. Yeah. So it's just a matter of kind of living in so much of this place of self-love and self-acceptance and like the beauty that you are and the uniqueness that you are. And trust me, the people that you see on social media and all that, like I've talked to some of them who have like millions of followers and they're like, it is terrifying every day about what my hair looks like. Mm-hmm. Like I don't have that fear, but they're insecure about it because they don't feel like their hair looks good and they're afraid somebody's going to judge them and so on and so forth. So it's so much about the internal work to overcome some of those insecurities that we all face.
We've talked for 17 hours now. If anyone has made it to this point, you need an award. Just so.
Yeah, the call to action is send me a link on or send me a message and I'll send you a book. I'll send you a book. Just send me a message and we'll get your address and I'll send you one of my books. You can pick one of the two.
You came from the podcast and you get a free book.
Yeah.
So to wrap up, where can people find you at? Where can they send you that message at?
Yeah. So I do have a website. It's tjsweet.net and you can message me there directly. It goes straight to me. So I get all those inquiries whenever they get on through the website. There's a Wheel of Life assessment on there for free if you want that too. But then obviously on social media, so TJSweet_, you can pretty much find me on all the platforms. With that, you'll see some different areas that show the gratitude guy, because that's kind of the tagline to my TJSweet_. So, but just message me anywhere and I'll make sure to respond back to you pretty quick.
You're on basically all social platforms.
Every social platform.
And we're working on pushing out more content, more awesome stuff for everyone to do. There's YouTube, there's Spotify, iTunes, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram,
LinkedIn,
all the things.
Yep.
I need you to help me with LinkedIn.
I can help.
I've never even opened LinkedIn.
Oh.
And I need to dive into that, I think. So
yeah.
Another topic for another day. So thank you on a personal level and on a professional level. Thank you for being the way that you are and being you, because being you helps me also. So
I appreciate you.
I can't wait to see where all this goes. I have a feeling this thing's going to go to the moon and back.
Yep.
So just thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
See ya.
Never stop.